I worked myself to death in my past life, but reborn as a noble. This time, I'm the one pulling the strings, not the one being crushed. As the starving recruits charge, Ryan orders Selena to unleash a specialized cold wind spell across the battlefield. The temperature plummets instantly, and the soldiers start shivering in their boots, while Castile chuckles, thinking Ryan is wasting precious mana. The freezing air begins to bite into the morale of his entire front line. The magic hits the front lines, and the effect is immediate. The soldiers are literally freezing in place. Selena wonders if a bit of lightning would be flashier, but Ryan stops her, coolly explaining that the ancient double trouble of hunger and biting cold is enough to break any army. The poor recruits are now too busy chattering their teeth to hold their swords, and they start begging to retreat. Their captain screams at them like a maniac, but the soldiers are frozen solid, unable to move a muscle. They've finally realized that fighting for a jerk like Castile isn't worth dying of hypothermia. Castile is still sitting comfortably, completely oblivious to the tragedy unfolding at the gates. He's busy bragging to his cronies about how smart he is, imagining himself capturing Ryan as a trophy. He's so focused on his own ego that he hasn't noticed his entire front line is currently begging for a warm blanket. The situation turns into a total disaster for the Empire. The soldiers are failing to push forward, and the frontline commander is absolutely desperate. He realizes that if they don't retreat now, his men are going to turn into human ice sculptures, so he sends an urgent messenger to the rear. The messenger sprints all the way to Castile's fancy tent, panting and desperate. He reports that the front line is collapsing because the soldiers are starving and freezing. Instead of acting like a leader, Castile just stares at him with pure annoyance, clearly hating that his glory day is being ruined by facts. Castile calls the messenger a coward and loses his temper completely. He doesn't care if the men are dying. He only cares that they aren't winning. In a fit of narcissistic rage, he executes the messenger on the spot and declares that he is going to head to the front to lead the charge himself. Castile hops on his horse, looking like a budget hero in a suit of armor that cost more than his soldiers' lives. He rides up to the city walls with his main force, ready to personally bless the battlefield with his supposed genius, completely unaware that he is riding directly into a dumpster fire of his own making. He screams at his mages to get to work, and they frantically start chanting, raising the earth to construct a massive bridge over the moat. Castile watches with a smug grin, believing he's solved the problem. But he's really just building a very expensive path to his own defeat. With the bridge magically completed, Castile draws his sword and bellows for a full-scale assault. He promises a fortune to whoever captures Ryan alive. The entire Imperial force lets out a roar and begins the final charge, sprinting across the bridge with delusions of victory dancing in their heads. As the charging mob gets closer, Ryan's men report the situation. Ryan doesn't look worried at all. Instead, he turns to Leah with a sinister smirk and orders her to dump the special cog into the moat, blocking all exits. It's time to show the enemy what true environmental impact looks like. Soldiers pull the levers, and the thick, dark oil starts gushing through the pipes. It cascades down into the river, swirling right underneath the bridge where the Imperial troops are crossing. They are so busy running toward the walls that they don't even realize they're currently walking across a giant liquid bomb. Meanwhile, Rosalind is sprinting toward Icelanding City, knowing her family's fate rests on her shoulders. After 3 days of relentless marching, her men are exhausted, but she's not stopping for anyone. She pulls up her map, calculating a faster route that cuts through the chaos, determined to outsmart the invading Imperial army. She stops her horse, sensing she's being watched by her babysitter, Mage Nox, who's been tailing her from the shadows. With a sharp command, she forces him to reveal himself. Suddenly, a guy pops out of thin air, causing the guards to freak out and reach for their swords. Rosalind waves her guards down, looking at Nox with a mix of defiance and desperate need. As he emerges from his hidden space, she isn't intimidated by the man sent to assassinate her if she messes up. She's too busy planning a tactical strike that could wipe out the Imperial army in one go. She lays out her plan, bypass the city and attack the Imperial rear. She knows Nox is supposed to keep her on a leash, but she's banking on the fact that he doesn't want Ryan to die. She's effectively playing a game of chicken with an assassin, all for the sake of the mission. The tension is palpable, but Rosalind doesn't blink. She explains the entire tactical breakdown, showing exactly where Nox needs to go. She wants him to handle the water upstream, waiting for her signal to open the floodgates and turn the battlefield into a giant, muddy grave for the invaders. As she finalizes the details, the scene shifts to the Elven Queen's palace. The elves are debating Ryan's proposal, with half the court calling humans cunning snakes. The Queen, however, knows they're desperate for food, so she lets Iora speak the truth about Ryan's competence. The debate drags on as the stubborn elders argue whether Ryan is truly a genius or just exceptionally lucky. They are bickering back and forth, wasting precious time trying to decide if a mere human is worth the political trouble of an alliance, while the Queen watches the room with a weary, calculating gaze that signals she's tired of their arrogance. Finally, the Elven Queen shuts down the dissenters and makes her choice. She will personally head to the battlefield to see if Ryan is actually worth saving. She isn't betting on a dying horse, so she decides to see the war for herself, and as she prepares to move, the scene finally cuts to the chaotic front wall. At the wall, Ryan is playing it cool. He stares at the chaos below and refuses to trigger the trap yet. He's obsessed with perfection, waiting for the perfect moment while Imperial soldiers start crawling up the wall like ants, oblivious to the fact that they are already doomed. Castile, high on his own ego, finally decides to cross the bridge himself. He charges forward, thinking he's going to capture Ryan alive and claim the glory. He has no idea that the genius plan he's executing is actually just walking perfectly into Ryan's kill zone. Ryan's guards rush to form a human shield, shielding him from the chaos of the wall. Ryan spots his opening and bellows at Selena to launch a fireball straight into the moat. Selena doesn't hesitate. She channels her power and unleashes a blazing orb of fire, aimed perfectly at the unsuspecting Castile and his advancing troops. Castile sees the fire coming and starts cackling, convinced it's a desperate final move. He barks at his mages to rush forward and construct a massive barrier, mocking Ryan's amateur magic. He thinks they are successfully blocking an attack, completely blind to the fact that they are just playing right into Ryan's devious trap. The mages exert every ounce of their remaining mana to hold the shimmering barrier, while Castile sneers, calling Ryan a total idiot for wasting energy. The tension is high, but Ryan just watches with a calm, predatory grin, knowing that their precious barrier is actually keeping them trapped exactly where he wants them. To everyone's shock, the fireball doesn't even touch the barrier. It sails right past them and plunges straight into the moat. Castile bursts into laughter, mocking Ryan for having terrible aim and missing his target by a mile. He's busy patting himself on the back, calling himself the greatest military genius in history. Castile is still high on his own ego, declaring himself the pride of the empire. Then suddenly, the ground beneath them turns into living hell. The moat erupts into a massive, blinding explosion of fire. The celebration dies instantly as his men realize the water they were crossing has turned into a giant liquid bomb. Panic ensues as the river of fire incinerates everything in its path. Castile and his men stare up at the walls, watching Ryan's cold, unbothered expression, and they genuinely begin to think he's a demon sent from the underworld. The sheer scale of the destruction is enough to break any soldier's sanity. The battlefield is now a screaming nightmare of flame and shadow. Castile realizes he's sent all his troops to their deaths, and they are currently being burned to literal cinders. The genius Duke finally crumbles. admitting that Ryan isn't just a strategist, he's an absolute cold-blooded devil in human form. Ryan, looking utterly bored by the carnage, starts feeling a classic case of post-battle fatigue. He rubs his temples, realizing he's done all the heavy lifting, and decides to hand the cleanup duty over to Selena. He turns his back on the inferno and starts strolling away, ready to call it a day. Castile finally snaps and orders a full retreat, desperate to escape the hellfire. He scrambles back to his camp, but as he arrives, he finds the place eerily empty, not a single guard left. He's perplexed and terrified, wondering where his army disappeared to, then suddenly death drops from the sky. A massive, heavy sword crashes into the ground, narrowly missing his face and pinning him to the dirt. Castile shrieks, looking up to see a fierce woman warrior standing over him, with icy rage in her eyes. Rosalind has arrived, and she's not here for a tea party, she's here to collect some answers. Castile tries to use his status as a Grand Duke to demand respect, but Rosalind isn't having any of it. She pulls out a long, vicious whip, and the air whistles as she begins to deliver some long-overdue customer service to the Duke. He screams as the first lash lands, finally learning that some people just don't care about titles. Rosalind's men are still working Castile over, but the guy just won't stop yapping about his entire army getting turned into human barbecue at the fortress. Rosalind is losing her cool. It's like listening to a broken record that only plays. I was defeated by magic. She demands they keep the pressure on until he stops the nonsense and tells the absolute truth. She calls a tactical timeout to plan the next assault, her mind swirling with elaborate battle formations to lure the enemy out. Suddenly, a rustle in the nearby brush snaps her into high alert. She draws her blade, barking at the hidden intruder to step out right now, unless they want to discover what steel tastes like. To her total shock, the bush part to reveal a group of ethereal, glowing figures. It's Irea and the elven contingent. Rosalind's eyes narrow. She's convinced this is some grand scheme where the elves are playing double agent with the Empire. The air crackles with tension as she begins to unload her verbal arsenal of accusations. The elves are absolutely offended, treating her insults like a stain on their noble reputation, and they prepare to retaliate. Just as the standoff is about to turn into a bloodbath, a shimmering, violet barrier of pure, protective magic surges up between the two parties, putting an immediate, forced pause on the hostilities. The elven queen steps through the magical veil, her presence as cool as moonlight. She calmly tells Rosalind that if they were Ryan's enemies, they'd have already left, but since they are his allies, there's no need for this theatre. Rosalind, still skeptical, demands the kind of proof that only a fool would ignore. Aurora produces a handwritten letter, and the moment Rosalind spots that unique, unmistakable family seal, her face pales. It's a mark that no imposter could ever dream of forging. She decides to trust them, but only under the condition that they are kept on a very, very short, watchful leash from here on out. The Queen just smiles at the threat, perfectly content to be monitored. Behind her, the elven ladies are grumbling about why they're humoring a human who barely trusts her own shadow. The Queen remains cryptic, whispering that if humans were simple enough to trust on a whim, they wouldn't be humans at all. She orders her men to wave their flags high, ensuring Ryan knows that reinforcements have finally arrived. She doesn't want to play hide-and-seek anymore. She wants to charge straight into the heart of the city and find out if the rumors of the Forbidden's magic are actually true. On the city walls, Ryan stands looking over the carnage, sighing with a genuine, heavy sadness. He's truly mourning the loss of so many men who could have been productive workers instead of cooling corpses. Just then, a soldier sprints up, breathless, reporting a cavalry approaching from the horizon. Ryan turns his gaze, but the moment he catches a glimpse of the banner waving in the wind, his world stops. It's the distinct, unmistakable flag of Priscilla, and the sudden realization that his own people have arrived leaves him completely and utterly stunned.